Hey everyone, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. We're a genetics-based precision medicine company that's exploring all the big questions around holistic health, wellness, and performance optimization. If you're tired of the traditional healthcare system and want to sign up as a member with us, head over to wildhealth.com. And if you're someone who's looking for a high-touch, all-inclusive concierge medical experience specifically designed for executives and high performers, check out our premium program at wildhealth.com/premium. Now let's get into it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Wild Health Podcast. Super excited to have with me today Meghan Henry. Meghan is a professional high-performance mindset coach, but she didn't start that way. Meghan is actually a multi-sport athlete, and she was on Team USA Skeleton, where she competed in the Olympic trials, 3 of them, where she competed in Worlds, 3 of them, and has really performed in on a high level in multiple sports. So she actually started out as a multi-sport athlete back in high school, where she was playing hockey, then transitioned to field hockey and track at American University, where she finally settled on skeleton in the Army. Oh yeah, she's in the Army, by the way, where she's a captain. Meghan has clearly been successful in so many areas of her life, and I'm super excited to have her on the podcast today, not to just talk about her success in sport, but really to talk about the mindset behind all of it. We want to talk about purpose. We want to talk about mindset. We want to talk about the thing that really matters when it comes to performance. So Meghan, welcome to the podcast. Super excited to have you here.
Well, great. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. So there's so much to talk about. We only have a limited amount of time. I really want to dig in, and we're going to talk today, like I said, we're going to talk about purpose, about life goals, about identity and performance. Can we just start off with something really basic? And what I'm interested in is, what's your purpose in life, and why is it important for us all to have a purpose?
This is such a great question, because for a long time I would have answered this a different way. I would have said that mine was to come here and to be an athlete and compete and demonstrate my gifts, my physical talents and gifts. And I do believe that we all come to planet Earth and we all have different desires, and we're given those desires for a reason. And like for me, it was to be an athlete for a long time. That's what I really wanted to do. I had a lot of drive and passion for that. I didn't have the desire to be a chef or an artist. Like, that just wasn't something that was on my path. However, I ultimately believe that through being an athlete and through competing, that those desires and experiences were to help me fulfill my purpose, which is in serving others and helping other high performers or people who desire to be high performers, which I believe we are all high performers. It's whether you have uncovered that or not. And so now my purpose is to help you unleash the power of your mind using your stories and the power of your subconscious mind so that you can unlock your potential. So I still have the desire to do like physical challenges and things like that. It's just that initial desire as an athlete has transitioned to be a mindset coach and helping others fulfill their purpose and their potential.
Awesome. How did your own journey transition from athlete to mindset coach? Like, tell me a little bit about what sort of led you to this new realization.
So I'll back it way up. So I was born 2 months premature, and I faced the odds from the start as an underdog. I was an introverted extrovert. I've always chosen paths that required growth and evolution, or were a challenge in some regard. And so when I first started skeleton, so I played field hockey in college. I joined the Army. Both of those things are very like team oriented. I did run track growing up as well, but my main like first athletic love was field hockey. And so when I came into skeleton, it's very individual. It's just you and the sled. So there's no one else to blame for any results that you don't like. You know, it's so individual. And I spent a lot of time being a perfectionist and over-analyzing how things were going and really trying to force results. And so that did not work. I found out very quickly that was not working for me. And so that's when I really got into like mindset and meditation and really, really adopting that. And I knew that the mental game was what was inhibiting me as an athlete. And I even had like exposure to sports psychology when I was in college, but I did not take it seriously. I did not take advantage of it. And so then I was, I believe that we get lessons and we get them over and over again until until you learn them, or not. You'll just
Right.
perpetually be given the same sort of teaching opportunity in your life. And so that was when I really got into mindset. And I've always been interested in the mind and how people think. And I minored in psychology in my undergrad. And so I ended up really, really just going so much into it, and it helped my performance a lot as an athlete. But I knew at that time that the next step for me after my inevitable athletic career end, that mindset and like sports psychology was going to be the next step for me. So
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, it's so it seems like a really natural transition. Something that you're obviously interested in that brought you a lot of success, and it sounds like it helped you a good bit along the way. Were there challenges also along the way that helped sort of light this path for you? I assume it wasn't all like unicorns and rainbows, right?
no, it wasn't. However, that's to be expected in our human experience, that there's going to be upsets and ups and downs, and that's what makes it exciting in a way. So before the 2014 Olympics, I had life-threatening blood clots, and I sat out for the whole year. So I
Wow.
was it was early on in my skeleton career. It was in the first few years of me actually competing, but I won national championships in 2012, and later that summer I had blood clots, and it was right before the season was supposed to start. And so at the time I went from training, you know, 5, 6 days a week, sometimes twice a day. I was in incredible shape. Like to this day, I have not been as strong as I was in that summer. And so I sat out the season before the Olympic season. So because in winter sports, the Olympics falls in like the February, so it would be February of 2014. So I sat out the 2012 to 2013 season. So the Olympic season is actually 2013 to 2014. So I sat out that whole year, and it was such a mental struggle because like I said, I went from training, and then all of that time I spent training, I was all of a sudden in the hospital, bedridden for 10 days. And when I left, I was told I could walk for 10 minutes a day. And so it was quite the contrast. And then I was constantly in and out of doctor's offices because I was put on blood thinners. At the time, it was Coumadin. So you had to monitor the dosage and everything.
Yeah.
And so it was a very huge contrast. It was very, very trying, a very mentally trying time. And so that was definitely one of those challenges along the way that made me realize that full disclosure, I got the blood clots from taking a birth control. And before I started to take it, my intuition was like, do not go on this.
Yeah.
You should not be doing this. Like in my soul, I felt like it was not the right choice for me. So that was a lesson that I got of like listening to your intuition and trusting yourself. That was a really big lesson from that experience. And also being your own advocate, because it took multiple doctors. I saw 5 doctors until I got a correct like diagnosis. And so fighting for yourself and what you believe in, that was another lesson I got from that challenge. And then I also missed the entire season before the 2022 Olympic Games because I am in the Army, and at the time that was during COVID, as everyone remembers. Mm-hmm. And so we had really strict travel restrictions. So I wasn't even able to do skeleton very, very minimally, and I was not able to travel. And so I learned then, you could be the victim, or you could try to make that path work for you. So I spent a lot of time, honing my physical skills, trying to get as strong as fast as I could, but also doing a ton of visualization. And I just was telling myself different stories. So that's kind of where that's where my coaching philosophy comes from, that the stories that we tell ourselves really lead us in certain directions, either good or bad. So I chose at that time to be telling a story that, okay, I can still come back, I can still compete, and like eventually they're going to let me travel. And so those are two like really big challenges that helped light that path for me. And yeah, like I said, I really got into mindset at the beginning of my skeleton career, because I was so focused on outcomes and results and forcing things. And that was like the start of this transition towards mindset. That was the beginning of it then.
Yeah, you can totally see how without a well-defined purpose, it would be really challenging to maintain the level of effort that you had to put forth towards your goal in skeleton with those sorts of roadblocks, right? I mean, that's huge. You're talking about, I mean, you're on blood thinners, like that's legit and scary to be thinking about even competing at skeleton on blood thinners, I would imagine. And not to mention you're taking substantial time away from the sport and having to build back up to get back into the game. So it makes sense to me, at least, that the purpose and having that really well-defined purpose is important to push through those really challenging moments in your life. I suspect that's your experience. Tell me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, it certainly isn't always easy, right? To have that mindset that like, okay, I can come back from this, like from these challenges. And I was just so driven to excel that was, and like I said, at the time, my purpose was to compete and represent my country. And I didn't know that it was leading to like my greater purpose, right? My greater purpose being to serve others. And I do believe that having those experiences makes me a better coach, because I've been very successful at a very high level. I've also quote unquote failed at the highest level. So it makes me better equipped to help other people. And I believe it makes me more relatable. And so I'm firmly of the belief that everything happens for a reason. And the sooner you can adopt that mindset, that even though this thing is uncomfortable, I don't like it, like it is here for my highest purpose, the sooner that you can adopt that mindset, the quicker you can transition into what is the next step. It allows you to focus on like, okay, what's the solution, or what's like most important that I can be doing in this moment right now, even if right now it does suck.
Right. I assume you work with your clients. You probably talk with them about, I suspect, both mindset and purpose. How do you do you force them to define a purpose, or force, that's a bad word, but do you encourage them to define a purpose, or work through sort of evaluating their own personal purpose before really diving into mindset, or do you sort of see them as hand in hand?
I see them as hand in hand, and it also depends when an athlete is coming to me. So if it's like, okay, I urgently need someone to help me right before a competition, it's like, okay, what are some minor things that we can focus on in the moment right now? But if there's time where like, okay, it's not immediate, the competition isn't tomorrow, and we're trying to adjust something. I do think that the purpose piece is really big. So I usually ask the question like, why? What is your why? Why are you doing this? And going down like multiple levels, like, well, I want to make a national championship team, or I want to make a world championship team. Okay, why? Well, because it would mean that I'm really good at my sport. Okay, well, why? Well, I get to represent my country. Why? You're trying to go like multiple layers to get to like the core versus like some surface level thing. Because on the days that you really don't feel like doing the training or eating well and all of that, there has to be a big enough reason why you're doing that. And even as an athlete, for me, I wanted to compete, but my underlying reason why was to inspire others. That was the underlying quote unquote purpose. Like, yes, I wanted to demonstrate my physical gifts and talents, but the underlying purpose that I told myself was to inspire others, specifically female athletes. And I have two nieces. So for me, it was to be a good role model for my nieces. That was a reason for me. And I think and it can be anything, right? As long as it has meaning for you, then it will make those days that are not ideal much easier when you have that as your end point on your GPS.
I love that. I'm curious how your mindset changed over your athletic career. So maybe just as sort of like an experiment, could we think about your athletic self, maybe like right when you're starting skeleton? So you're just getting started with the U.S. skeleton national team. How would your current athletic performance coaching self talk to the old you, and what tips would you give yourself for creating that mindset that you know is going to be successful and help you perform at your highest?
So I've never been asked this question before, and this is so, so good, because I was a very, very different person when I first started skeleton, and even as a college athlete. I very much had substantial negative self-talk. And like being a perfectionist, it comes from not fully believing in yourself. That's usually why someone is a perfectionist. They're trying to control all aspects because they don't fully trust that they are worthy or deserving or whatever it may be. And so that was me. I was like, I want this thing. There was a huge disconnect between the goals that I wanted and what I was accomplishing. So I would say that I was more of a victim mindset. Like, oh, well, my teammates are doing this and I train really hard. And, my focus was very much on the external and on other people. So myself today would tell negative Megan to one, focus on yourself. What are the things that you can control? And what are your intentions on how you want to show up? Who do you want to be when you perform? And then I would also focus on her self-talk. I would encourage her to examine her self-talk and whether or not she thinks that is supporting her goals and what she wants to accomplish. And most likely her answer would have been, no, it's not supporting me. And that is why I did get into mindset, because I saw there was the disconnect and that I really wasn't setting myself up for success. And I think that as a coach now, looking back, I mean, I just was very, very different. It was, I wouldn't say I had a totally fixed mindset, because I had a growth mindset, especially in like sports and things like that. But I would say that there were parts of me that had a very fixed mindset. And which is interesting now that I look back at it. So I'm really grateful that you asked this question. And I think that the main things that I would have told me would be to focus on yourself, stay in the present moment, examine your self-talk, and control what you can control.
Let's say, I guess what I'm curious is, I think just about all of us, maybe not all of us, but most of us have some degree of negative self-talk. That inner critic is in some ways it feels like just part of the human condition, right? And some people clearly have it worse than others. But what I'm curious is, how do you, once you recognize that inner critic, what do you do about it? Like, how do you silence it? How do you not listen to it? How do you quiet it down? What are some tools that you have that you recommend for people to manage that inner critic a little bit?
So I always say, I said, talk to yourself more than you listen. And it's a skill. Anything in mindset is a skill, just like a physical skill, a trade skill, a skill you have in your career, sales, anything. It does take time to develop. And so for for one of the reasons why I encourage some sort of mindfulness practice like meditation is because it gives you the opportunity to examine your own thoughts and what you end up thinking about. And it doesn't have to be a long practice, but to be able to just be with yourself and notice that. Because when you're in a training environment and something is happening and you have that negative self-talk, it's more difficult to recognize it in the moment and have the awareness if you haven't done it before, right? You're like trying to drive the car when you've had no lessons. It's like it's more difficult to do. So I tell people to, one, talk to yourself more than you listen. So when you do recognize and you have developed the awareness, like, oh, okay, my monkey mind, whatever you want to call it, my ego is talking to me right now and telling me something negative. One, you can ask yourself, is this true? Is that true? And the other thing is that to have prepared statements. So, and this could be in the form of an affirmation. And in my sessions with clients, we develop affirmations that are very much personal to them. I usually end up taking it from conversations that we've had, from their own words, so it means something to them versus like, I am strong, I am fast, I am successful, just like an off-the-shelf affirmation. And there's certainly value in that. However, if you can have something, a statement for yourself that means something that you can generate feeling from, it will be way more effective than something that you likely have resistance to if it's countering a belief of yours. So if you're saying like, I am rich and you have $0 in your bank account, there's going to be a ton of resistance there. So a way, if you're going to use an off-the-shelf affirmation, I'll give another side tip. You can use because, so you can say like, I am rich because I have a family, I have a house, I have a roof over my head, whatever that is. And then you can also ask it in the form of a question. So you can say, well, why am I so rich? Why am I successful? Why am I a national champion? Because your brain likes to close loops. So if you leave it open and allow it to provide evidence for you that you failed at this thing, it's going to do that. We have a natural negativity bias, just like you said, and it comes from survival. That is so normal, and I want people to really know that is absolutely normal. It is for survival. You're going to experience that, and that's why if you can have something prepared to say back to that mind, that's super helpful. Or you can literally say, no, I reject that. So I'll give a personal experience. I was training for Masters weightlifting national championships, and I had been failing my snatch for a week straight before going into this competition. So my mind was starting to talk to me, and I was telling myself I had goals for what I wanted to accomplish. So I was like, okay, in this competition, I'm going to snatch 50, let's say if it was 55 kilos. I don't actually even remember. But let's say, okay, I'm going to snatch 55 kilos. I snatched 55 kilos. And my mind was like, no, you're not going to. You failed every day. You keep failing the snatch. You're not going to make the snatch. It's starting to chatter at you. And so what I said, I was like, no, that's not true, because in the past I've snatched this and I've done this. So I provided evidence against it. And so you might feel like you sound crazy, right? You're having a conversation with yourself, but it does help, because then you can you build that awareness of recognizing this negative self-talk, and then you take the power back versus being the victim and allowing this mind to like get out of control and take over. You could be like, no, I have done this before, and I reject that. That's not true about me. One of the other things that I use for example, is that when something is negative like that, like, okay, you failed. It's it happened in this one place. It was just that one time, and that's not representative of me. And then the things that you've done well, that's representative of me. That happens all the time. I always perform like that, and that's just like me. So you're reaffirming what it is that you want more of, and that's really what I help people do, is to keep their mind focused on what it is that they want, and telling the stories that they want more of, versus giving into that negative self-talk, because we're just trying to redirect the focus. And part of that, not to be too long-winded, has to do with your reticular activating system. So the more that you end up like focusing on something negative, that's the more your subconscious brings those experiences to you. And if you can shift that focus to be like, no, I focus on my wins every day. I've got wins in mind that I know I've got from training, and I bolster myself up with those. You're training your mind to look for those things more often. And one good example I give is if you say that, okay, I've been in the market for a white Tesla, all of a sudden you start seeing white Teslas everywhere. That's your reticular activating system, is that like you buy something that you've wanted for a long time and you see everybody else has it. That's your reticular activating system. It's because it sees that this is important to you and it's bringing it to your attention. So if you can do that with the things that you want, then you end up seeing more of it.
I love that. I love how you were, it basically felt like you're first recognizing, so it's just the awareness that there's the inner critic or this negative self-talk in the first place. And then once you create that awareness and you can pick up on it, then it sounds like it's like this counterattack with gratitude and self-affirmations, right? It's like, oh, you want to say something bad? Well, here, how about this? And then, hit it with gratitude and self-affirmations, which is just so awesome. And it is like, it's almost like, you're manifesting this positive self-talk through these affirmations and this gratitude, which you so eloquently put is through, hitting your attention and your awareness through the reticular activating system, creating more of that positivity just by thinking it. It's like the most, like the simplest way I could put it is fake it till you make it. Is
Definitely.
that a decent way? Yeah. Okay, cool. That's
So
how it
I would
feels.
say,
I mean, that's what it
what
sounds
I
like.
would say is be it until you become it, because it's a more
Okay. Yeah.
positive way. It's a more affirmative
Sure.
way
Yeah.
of saying it.
Yeah.
So be it until you become it. And so what's really awesome about your subconscious mind is that it doesn't know the difference between something that is real or imagined. So you can do this through like visualization, but the affirming thing is helpful as well, right? You're telling yourself and believing and acting as if this thing that you want is true, or that you already have this thing. So to go into like the manifesting bit, then you're bringing that experience to you. Your subconscious is so powerful. It's controls 95% of your reality. Like it's like the most amazing supercomputer that there is. And we're all running on really old programming from between birth to about age 7. There's no filter on what is coming into our subconscious mind. So a lot of our beliefs that are running our life, they're not even ours truly. And it's just old, outdated software. And so we haven't really spent time upgrading that software. So that's really like what that whole process is. And it sounds kind of woo-woo and it sounds like it's simple, but it is simple, but it does require the action and the effort to do it, because although it's simple, it's the repetition and the habit that makes it so effective with that self-talk, with those affirmations. That it can be so powerful. And yes, it sounds simple, but again, what's simple isn't always easy. It's easy to do. It's also easy not to do. So that's why it's such an important practice for anybody, not just athletes, just for anybody to be like, I'm running on some really outdated software. Like this is the iPhone 1. I've got the iPhone 15 now. So like we need to make some upgrades. That's basically all this is just upgrading your mental software.
I like that. So it's almost like what you're describing there is you've got this belief system that is, as you mentioned, set in place when you're a small child. And we just sort of unconsciously continue to run with that belief system throughout adulthood, unless we stop and take the chance to actually perceive it, recognize the belief system, and then start to do the work to upgrade it to the new software, right? That's
exactly.
So I guess, so then how does one start that process? Did they call you? What
Call
like,
me.
It's yeah. Like it sounds like something like not sort of intuitive, right? I mean, I can say that on a podcast, but then I'm sure what my listeners are like, okay, cool. How do I do that thing? I mean, I can be positive when I'm negative to myself, but what else, how do I go about identifying a belief system and then upgrading to the new software?
So I did the Enlifted certification, and we talk about, rather than like trying to like upheave your whole belief system, you can start by just the words that you're using. So, for example, and I do use them occasionally. I try to correct myself, but some of the words are soft talk words. So things like maybe, should, could have, might. Like, oh, well, I might go to the store. I might go to this party. That's like soft talk. Not like, it is soft talk. And so if you can just examine some of the words that you're using, that's a simple way to be like, okay, why am I giving myself an out or softening my language? Like, I want to be have like firm talk. I want to be affirmative when I'm speaking. Because when you're speaking with like softening language, you're telling your mind that like, oh, I'm uncertain. I have a lot of doubt here. So that's one way, but also just changing, like I said, just some of the words that you're using, and that could be again from the affirmations that you're using, and affirmations. So affirmations is a statement. Affirmations is the question. So like, why am I successful? Why? So you're asking yourself empowering questions so that your mind has to come up with the answers. I would say that it is helpful to have someone else who has an ear outside of you provide guidance with this. But you certainly can do it on your own. There's certainly aspects that you can incorporate. And especially if you are like, okay, what is it that I want? Do I have clarity on what I want in my life? And like, what's the gap between where I am and where I want to be? And if you come up with these statements like, okay, this version of Meghan that is the super successful mindset coach, what is she doing? And how can I turn those into affirmations? And if I have resistance to those affirmations that I'm saying, well, why is that? Why do I not feel worthy? Do I not feel like worthy, deserving, successful, whatever that may be? I will say, like, you could just do these affirmations that I am successful because, and fill in the blank, and you can say them over and over and over and over and over, and it is effective. Like that will get you to where you want to be. It's just a bit slower of a process if they're not super personal to you, but it is effective. I did that throughout my athletic career. I used affirmations. I said them every day in the mirror. The repetition is really what makes the difference. So if you're listening and you're like, oh my God, I don't even know where to start, I would literally start talking to yourself. What are thoughts that you want to have? You can even take your thoughts that are negative and flip them. What's the affirmative version of this statement? And then start saying those ones to yourself. Like, these negative thoughts that I recognize are not helping me, what's the positive version of that? Start saying those and repeat them all the time.
Be it till you become it. I like it. So, all right. So, I'm an athlete. I've defined my purpose. I've gone through a long, thoughtful experiment to find an eloquent purpose that defines my goals and my life goals and my meaning in life. And I've created the ample mindset. But now it's time to perform. How does one begin separating, especially an athlete, or I mean, I guess not just an athlete, anyone in high stakes games, right? So I think this would include, business people. I think this would include literally pretty much everybody. How do you separate your identity as that thing, that athlete, that CEO, that, insert title here, and the performance that you then deliver? Because it seems to me that those things are so often just intertwined and connected for most of us.
Definitely. And I certainly experienced this as an athlete many times. And I've learned that, one, focusing on the process, setting intentions for your performance or your job, whatever it is, setting your personal intentions so that you detach your self-worth from those outcomes, especially in sports. Like, the best team doesn't always win, it's the team that performs the best. And that's why sports are so exciting. And you may perform your absolute best and still get beaten. So is it really a failure? Is your worth really is your worth tied to this outcome that you didn't accomplish, even though you performed your absolute best? So I think it's important to have that perspective. Like, I heard this on another podcast, that you are the GOAT of your reality. You're the greatest of all time in your reality because you are the only one with your experiences, your challenges, your obstacles, all of that. Like, that is so specific to you. So we live in a time where it's so easy to do the comparison game, right? And see what other people are doing and feel like you're keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak. And that, I think, is just to be like, I am so much better than I was 1 year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. It's the personal development train and personal growth. That's a lifelong journey. Like, we're all on it. And that is like the greatest gift that we have, is that we are constantly evolving who we are. And so I think it's important to keep that in perspective, and to have like those intentions of like, who do I want to be when I show up to this sales meeting, to dinner with my family? How do I want to show up? Who do I want to be in these circumstances? And am I being that way? Because that's a way to measure quote unquote success. Like, am I, or your self-worth, like, okay, am I being these things? Am I acting in accordance to and in alignment with the person who I want to be? That's where the self-worth and the accomplishments come from, versus the outcome of this thing. That's what's more important.
What have you seen with the athletes that you've worked with in terms of their ability to separate that identity from their actual performance? Does it generally lead to better performance? Does it sometimes lead to worse performance? Do you think they're unrelated completely?
So it does depend on the athlete. However, I think through like everything I just said, which I know is a lot, being able to like develop that presence and have that detachment from outcome, it frees you up so much to have a stellar performance and then increase and have better performances, because you're not tied to this outcome. And you're not, because when you're so attached to some outcome, you create resistance. And so you're more likely to create separation and keep you from it. And so you're pushing and pushing and pushing and forcing and forcing and forcing. And you're even less likely to get the thing that you want. And so what I have found is, when we're able to detach from outcome and really focus on the process, and can we stay in the present moment, set intentions for how we want to perform and show up, then they're very free. It frees up a lot of mental energy to show up fully and really, really perform. And there's a concept called the workhorse mentality, which is like a ton of analysis and the grit and the grind. And there's certainly aspects where that is needed. But when it comes time to, in sports, for example, when it comes time to performing, you want that racehorse mentality where you're performing. You're just there to perform. You're not there to think. You're not there to analyze in the moment. Because when you do that, you've paralysis by analysis. That's not the time for that. That's not the time. The time, that's past, right? So I always tell people, like, when you show up that day, like, it's done. The work is done. So like, there's nothing, you don't need to try harder. You just need to be. You just need to allow your body to do what it knows how to do. And so then you'll see that then they're able to like have fun with what they're doing. A novel idea, right? To have fun with what they're doing. And that is where our truest self really, really shines. It comes through when you're allowing that part of you to show up fully, to be present, to have fun. And your performance elevates because there's not that, like, the forcing and the rigidity. You're very much allowed to like be in a state of flow. So I have found that the performance does improve. It does go up.
I like that. There's something about it's sort of creating this concept that like the performance is not just today. It's not just the actual event. It's everything leading up to it as well. All of the time spent practicing and preparing and creating that mindset. All of those things, that was the effort, right? And now you're not even in this effort position anymore. Now you're just being. You're just present. And if you're detached, because if things aren't successful, it's not because today was unsuccessful. It's just because for whatever reason, you're all of the training didn't quite get you there, or whatever it is. But you met your purpose where it was to show up and to try as hard as you could, or whatever your purpose is, right? So I like how you
Definitely.
sort of, it's almost like you're extending out the moment to some extent, which helps detach from the actual outcome.
And like I said before, everything happens for a reason. So if you didn't win the competition and you wanted to, what can you learn from that? It's always an opportunity to learn, like, and shift and grow. There, like, that is always available to us. And so I think, and being like, okay, again, like back with the self-talk and talking to yourself more than you listen. This one event doesn't define me. Like, so what? Next time, I will get that. And just, you're like constantly reframing. It's such a process, and I'm so much better at it now, like as a coach, than I was as an athlete, to be able to reframe like that so quickly. But that's like, it's a skill, and just like everything is always working out for you. That's like, everything's always working out for you, even when it doesn't seem like it. It's always for your highest good. And that's like the mindset that I really try and stress to athletes. And sometimes it's tough, right? Like we attach ourselves to these outcomes. There's a lot of meaning, especially if you've got an athlete who's spent decades of their life training for something, and then it doesn't pan out. It's tough. It's a tough, like, transition, having to reframe something like that. But it's very, very powerful if you're able to do it, because it allows you to, one, take your power back, and you'll feel so much happier if you're able to do that, versus have this like huge attachment to outcome or a meaning associated with it.
We're kind of dancing around it a little bit, but maybe we just dive into it. So we're talking about success, right? And what we haven't said or not said is what really success is. And so I guess I'm curious, maybe to start, and I think your answer is going to be it depends on the person, which is probably good. But maybe we start with you with everything. You have a lot of wisdom in this space from all of your years in athletics, and now as a coach. What is success for you in your own performance, and how do we go about personally identifying what success should be for ourselves?
So I will agree with you. It does vary on the person. For me specifically, it's to have to show up fully and have the greatest impact on the person. Can they, even if they have like a 1% shift, can I have a positive impact on them to where they believe in themselves a little bit more? Like that to me is success. And again, it's such an individualized concept, and it can change over time. Like, my definition of success today could be different from a year from now. And my definition of success a year ago, before I retired from skeleton, was very different. And I frequently ask my clients, like, what does success look like for you? Because it does. It varies greatly from person to person. It could be that we've got two athletes, they're on the same exact team, and success for one looks like our team's going to states, and the other is like, I've been recruited and signed at a Division I school. It just could be totally different. One person could be thrilled with making junior varsity, and the other person is in bits because they didn't make the varsity team, right? So it really just varies on the person. And so for me, it's like, okay, can we uncover that? That's success for me. Can I help someone else figure out what their purpose is, their why, and what success looks like for them, so we can have a clearly defined goal, so we know where we're going. And then for me also, it is to feel happy. Do I feel happy and fulfilled doing what I am doing?
Awesome. I love that. Yeah, it's almost like it comes full circle. Like the whole process, like, we start with purpose, then we sort of identify mindset, start to separate identity from performance and success, and then that success comes all the way back around to, well, what was your purpose, right? And success and purpose are almost like mirror images of one another, right? So it's just this full circle of mindset. I love this stuff. This stuff is great.
It is great. I love this conversation.
This is awesome. Well, I do want to respect your time, but before I let you go, Meghan, I want to know, where can my listeners find out more about you? Where can they learn about any projects or things that you have coming up?
So I am on all social media channels as @TheSavageMeglet. And if you DM me, I will respond. I've got a website in progress. I'm also developing a course. It's called the Savage Fundamentals. And it's just the fundamental aspects of mental performance. So I'll just briefly say first, so SAVAGE is an acronym. It stands for structure, awareness, visualization, affirmation, gratitude, and execution. So in my practice and with my clients, these are the 6 fundamental tenets of mental performance that we dive into.
I love how our podcast sort of naturally met that acronym.
I know, it was
perfect.
Great.
Yeah.
So my tenets are really valid, right?
Yeah, it's working out. We didn't even plan that. That just kind of happened. That's pretty cool. Awesome. Well, this has been a really great conversation, Meghan. I hope that people hear it and get excited and either seek you out or seek out some sort of mindset shift of their own, because the opportunities here are as you know, huge for people, and to change the way that they can live their life and who they can be. So thank you so much for the work that you do.
Oh, thank you, Mike. Thanks so much for having me.
Awesome.
Hey everybody, a quick note about our precision medicine training program. It's been a really popular course. We're constantly hiring health coaches and physicians, but we're only hiring them as we grow if they're trained in precision medicine. You don't get that in medical school or other places. And so we've developed this training program, and we've completely revamped it recently. It's a lot more robust. So now there's still over 50 hours of live synchronous training. There's also all the asynchronous credit, over 50 hours of content. And as a physician, you get about 50 hours of AMA Category 1 CME credit, which is a nice benefit. For the health coaches going through the training program, it's now accredited by the National Board of Health and Wellness Coaching. So graduates are going to meet the requirement to sit for the board exam and become board certified health coaches. So there's a lot of benefits to that, not just the certification, but also when it comes to things like insurance reimbursement. So it's a really robust program. If you're a physician, a nurse practitioner, a PA, or someone that just wants to be a health coach, it's open to all of those categories. There's the 6-month program that's kind of the full program. And then we also have just a fundamentals of precision medicine course, which is completely on your own. It's online. It's all asynchronous. You still get the 50 hours of AMA Category 1, but it's self-paced. And you still have access to the online community, but not all the synchronous lectures as well. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to wildhealth.com/education. And we'd love to have you as part of our next class.